Hello there and welcome to Bow Beats, and today we're doing a bit of a versus video. We have the original Drumbrute versus the Drumbrute Impact. So this is the second video about the Drumbrute Impact, and if you haven't seen my review, I have a full review up on my channel, so go and check it out. Today's comparison will definitely be an apples to apples comparisons. This is two devices which share a lot of similarities but also quite different sound. So what I hope to do is show you how they sound different, some of the different features, maybe talk a little bit about small workflow changes, and also give you an idea of kind of what sets them apart. So hopefully I'll achieve that today in this versus video. Let's get to it. First I want to play you two beats. They are not the same beats, it's just to give you an idea of how these devices actually sound different. So listen for the sound differences, but also listen for the kind of dynamic differences. Next up, let's compare output processing. So on the Drumbrute original, you have a filter. It's a low pass or a high pass filter with resonance. And let's go for distortion on the Drumbrute Impact. So here are some of my opinions on output processing. While it's nice to have a filter, I don't think it's a kind of strong selling point on the Drumbrute. I don't really like the sound of this filter. I think it's kind of weak in a sense. It doesn't really add that much, and it's probably just better to filter it with some other device, maybe through a U-rack or a guitar pedal or in your DAW. Now on the Drumbrute Impact, on the other hand, you have a very nice distortion. And I don't know if you picked up on this, but when you engage the distortion, the volume doesn't get that much louder. It might seem a little louder, but if we actually look at the levels, it's kind of compressing the sound and gives it a much tighter sound. If we just listen to it here, so we can listen to this one here, the original Drumbrute. Listen kind of to the dynamics. And we have the Drumbrute Impact with a lot of distortion. And this is a pattern with a lot of accents and stuff going on to kind of change the dynamics. And the distortion really kind of crushes it, keeps it tightly packaged, and I feel it gives a more contemporary sound that's easier to fit it in a mix for sure. So I think when it comes to the little output processing that you've got going on with these devices, the Drumbrute Impact definitely has a big up here. So besides the sound, what are some major differences? Well, for example, on the Drumbrute Impact, you have the 8 pads here, which also corresponds to 10 instruments and 10 instrument tracks, because you have 8 pads, but you have the toms here and the cymbals and the cowbell. So there are 2 toms, a cymbal and a cowbell. So it's actually 10 sounds, corresponds to 10 sequencer tracks. On the Drumbrute, on the other hand, you have the 12 different pads here. So you have 12 pads, but 17 sounds, compared to the 8 pads and 10 sounds. So 7 more sounds. Now, does the increase in sounds matter? Well, I think, of course, it is a lot of fun to have the extra sequencer channels, but when I'm playing with the Drumbrute Impact, I don't really feel like I'm missing something. You have the maracas and tambourine, which I think are pretty cool here on the original Drumbrute. But other than that, I only miss that you can pitch the toms individually. So next up, let's build a beat on each device. I'll try and make it kind of similar. And one thing you're seeing me doing here is I'm engaging the color mode. And if you want to know more about it, go to my full review on the Drumbrute Impact. But basically you can shift kind of how the circuitry sounds for each of the different sounds here by holding shift and color mode, and you can see we engage it. You can also step sequence it, but more info in my full review that is up on my channel. And just for kicks, I'm going to use the FM drum here and program a little melody of sorts, as well as with the sap here on the original Drumbrute. So let's see how that sounds. Of course, the sap isn't meant for this, but the FM drum on the Brute here is definitely usable. So we're going to do some parameter locks here with the color mode. And let's, just for a kind of a final touch here, let's add some distortion. And this is how the original Drumbrute sounds. And without the stupid sap. And you can of course add maracas and tambourines and rim shots and claves on the original Drumbrute because it has more sounds. So hopefully you've gotten a feel for kind of the sound difference. The sequencer is almost exactly the same. Of course, there's a bit of difference here with impact and the color mode that you can parameter lock per step. Other than that, it's very, very similar. I haven't found really any big differences. And lastly, there's of course a big difference when it comes to outputs. You have 12 individual outputs on the Drumbrute, whereas on the Drumbrute Impact, you only have 4. So that's a major difference if you want to sequence every channel kind of individually into, say, outboard effects, or yeah, just into your DAW maybe if you have a multi-channel interface. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't think it's a deal breaker when it comes to the Impact though. I think that the sound of the Impact has one up on the Drumbrute's sound. For sure. I think the Drumbrute Impact sounds a lot better out of the box. And like I told you earlier, I feel that there's a lot more kind of dynamics going on in the Drumbrute. The sound is kind of cleaner, less compressed. But some of the sounds, like say the open hi-hat, has this almost like broken feel to it. As opposed to on the Drumbrute, where it's much less so. So out of the box, I do prefer the Impact a lot. But if you're into sound design, having the individual outputs, as well as having much more hands-on control for the sound on the Drumbrute, yeah, that can make up for any shortcomings if you think in terms of like compression and sound and how it sounds out of the box. Because if you just look at it, you have level, pitch, decay, impact, and sweep for just the kick number 1. And kick number 2, an additional kick, you have the same basic controls as for kick number 1 here on the Drumbrute Impact. So yeah, and same for snare, you have a lot more to work with. So that's something to keep in mind. You have the individual tom pitches, for example, you have more sounds. So hopefully my little comparison here has helped you make up your mind which one you want to get. So this is Bo from Bo Beats. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel, and if you want to see more videos and support what I do here, go to patreon.com/BoBeats. So thank you so much for watching.